Welcome back to Shadow Warefare, the channel where hidden darkness is exposed, spiritual warfare is brought into the light, and believers are awakened to the unseen battles happening around them every single day. Tonight's message is not entertainment. It is not fantasy. It is a warning, a serious warning. Because there are people sitting beside you, talking to you, laughing with you, eating with you, and even praying with you while carrying spirits that drain your peace, weaken your mind, and open doors to darkness in your life. Tonight we uncover a chilling Webelex, who claims there are certain people demons use as feeding stations. According to this testimony, these spirits attach themselves to wounded, bitter, angry, jealous, manipulative, or spiritually empty individuals and feed off the emotions, attention, and energy released during contact. The ex-witch said many believers unknowingly sit near spiritually contaminated people and later wonder why they suddenly feel exhausted, anxious, confused, angry, depressed, or spiritually dry. Listen carefully. This message may expose relationships you never questioned before. Before we begin, subscribe to Shadow Warefare, turn on notifications and type, "I choose light over darkness," in the comments below. Stay until the end because the final warning may explain why your spirit changes around certain people without any clear reason. Now listen carefully. The ex-witch began by saying something that shocked many people during her testimony. She said demons rarely attack openly at first. Instead, they look for access points. They study emotions. They study conversations. They study wounds. They search for spiritually weakened environments where darkness can hide behind ordinary human interaction. She claimed that one of the easiest ways for demonic influence to spread is through prolonged exposure to spiritually toxic individuals. She described how certain people become carriers of darkness without even realizing it. Not every person influenced by darkness is openly evil. Some appear friendly, charming, attractive, religious, or even broken and needy. But beneath the surface there may be bitterness, envy, rage, manipulation, lust, hatred, pride, or hidden rebellion constantly feeding spiritual forces. According to her testimony, demons feed through emotional openings. They thrive in chaos, division, fear, offense, gossip, envy, and despair. When someone constantly radiates those things, they become spiritually dangerous to stay around for too long. The ex-witch said one of the first signs is unexplained exhaustion after spending time near someone. Have you ever entered a conversation feeling peaceful, but walked away heavy, irritated, anxious, angry, or mentally drained? She claimed darkness often transfers through emotional atmospheres. Demons cannot force ownership over a believer's soul, but they can influence environments, emotions, and thought patterns when doors are repeatedly opened. She explained that witches were often taught to identify emotionally wounded individuals because wounded people become easier access points. People carrying deep unforgiveness, chronic anger, addiction, jealousy, or hatred unintentionally radiate spiritual instability. Demonic forces supposedly amplify those emotions because chaos creates more openings. The ex-witch described one woman who constantly complained about everyone around her. Every conversation became negative. Every story carried bitterness. Every gathering ended in conflict. Yet people continued sitting around her because they felt sorry for her. According to the testimony, spiritual heaviness followed that woman everywhere. Marriages around her struggled. Friendships broke apart. Confusion spread constantly. The ex-witch claimed spirits of division attached themselves to her wounded heart and fed through the endless negativity she released daily. Now hear this carefully. This does not mean believers should hate people who are struggling. Compassion matters. Love matters. Prayer matters. But wisdom matters too. The testimony warned that some people drain your spirit because they refuse healing. They reject truth. They reject accountability. They cling to darkness because pain has become their identity. When someone constantly pulls you away from peace, purity, faith, clarity, or obedience, you must discern whether that relationship is spiritually safe. The ex-witch claimed witches often targeted emotionally vulnerable people through social circles. Why? Because emotional contamination spreads faster through trust. She said if darkness can influence one bitter person in a family, workplace, church, or friend group, that bitterness begins infecting conversations. Soon gossip spreads. Offense spreads, suspicion spreads, division spreads. Eventually entire communities become spiritually weakened. She said demons love environments where people constantly criticize others. Why? Because criticism feeds pride, judgment, insecurity, and division all at once. The ex-witch explained that during rituals, witches would intentionally stir conflict among believers because divided people become spiritually distracted. Prayer weakens, discernment weakens, focus weakens, peace disappears. Think about this carefully. How many people enter rooms and immediately poison the atmosphere with negativity? How many conversations leave you feeling contaminated afterward? How many people subtly mock purity, prayer, discipline, faithfulness, or obedience to God? The testimony claimed darkness often hides behind humor. Some people constantly joke about evil, death, lust, betrayal, witchcraft, curses, or destruction. Others normalize sin so frequently that your spirit slowly stops resisting it. The ex-witch warned that repeated exposure desensitizes the mind. Once the conscience weakens, spiritual resistance becomes harder. She described certain individuals as open doors. These are people who constantly invite chaos into their lives through addiction, violence, manipulation, occult involvement, uncontrolled anger, or sexual immorality. According to the testimony, demons attach themselves to these patterns because repeated sin creates legal access for spiritual oppression. Again, this does not mean every struggling person is demon-possessed. The warning is about discernment. The ex-witch said believers often ignore spiritual warning signs because they fear appearing judgmental. Meanwhile, darkness quietly gains influence through compromise. She explained that one of the strongest feeding mechanisms for demons is attention. Spirits allegedly strengthen when people obsess over drama, conflict, lust, fear, or hatred. This is why some individuals constantly create emotional chaos. They unconsciously become channels through which darkness spreads emotional poison into every environment they enter. The ex-witch described a man who manipulated everyone around him through intimidation and emotional control. Whenever people challenged him, rage exploded. Fear filled the room. Others remained silent to avoid conflict. She claimed oppressive spirits fed through the fear and tension he created. Over time, everyone around him became emotionally exhausted. She then revealed something even more disturbing. According to her testimony, certain people intentionally maintain close physical, cognitive emotional vulnerability because spiritual transfer becomes easier when defenses are lowered. She claimed witches sometimes instructed followers to stay physically close to targets during grief, heartbreak, anger, intoxication, or depression because negative emotional states weaken spiritual resistance, which repeatedly emphasized the importance of guarding your atmosphere. She said your environment shapes your spiritual condition more than most people realize. Conversations matter. Music matters. Relationships matter. What you repeatedly tolerate slowly influences your thinking. She claimed many believers unknowingly lose spiritual sensitivity because they continuously surround themselves with people carrying darkness. At first, conviction feels strong. Then compromise becomes easier. Eventually, the spirit becomes numb. Have you ever noticed how certain people make you feel farther from God after spending time with them? Prayer becomes difficult. Peace disappears. Motivation decreases. Confusion rises. According to the testimony, this is not always psychological. Sometimes spiritual contamination is occurring through repeated exposure to toxic atmospheres. The ex-witch described how demons especially target isolated, insecure, rejected, and lonely individuals. Why? Because loneliness often lowers discernment. Desperate people tolerate spiritually dangerous relationships because they fear being alone. She warned viewers never to confuse emotional attachment with spiritual safety. She told the story of a young woman who constantly attracted destructive friendships. Every relationship brought manipulation, drama, betrayal, and emotional collapse. Eventually, the woman realized she ignored warning signs because she craved acceptance more than peace. The X, which claimed darkness exploits emotional desperation by disguising harmful people as comforting companions. One of the most alarming parts of the testimony involved envy. The X, which said jealousy opens powerful doors for demonic influence because envy secretly resents another person's blessing, peace, beauty, favor, success, or joy. She claimed some individuals become spiritually dangerous because hidden envy causes them to celebrate your downfall internally. She described people who smile publicly while secretly resenting you privately. According to the testimony, witches were trained to identify envious individuals because as destructive spiritual forces. Envy silently feeds bitterness. Bitterness feeds hatred. Hatred feeds destruction. The X-witch warned believers not to share every personal detail with everyone around them. She claimed some people misuse intimate information spiritually, emotionally, or psychologically. Vulnerability without discernment becomes dangerous. She described how gossip functions spiritually like contamination. Once private information spreads through malicious conversation, confusion and mistrust multiply rapidly. She claimed demons thrive in gossip-filled environments because gossip destroys unity while feeding pride and judgment. Think about how many people constantly discuss others negatively. The X, which said if someone repeatedly brings darkness into conversations, eventually that darkness begins affecting everyone listening. This is why spiritually mature believers must protect their ears, minds, and hearts. Another major warning involves sexual immorality. The X, which claimed sexual relationships create spiritual connections deeper than most people realize. She said many people unknowingly bind themselves emotionally and spiritually to toxic individuals through lust-driven relationships. After separation, they still feel emotionally trapped, mentally tormented, or spiritually oppressed. According to the testimony, darkness exploits soul-level attachments formed through intimacy without spiritual wisdom. She warned viewers not to ignore sudden personality changes after unhealthy relationships. Some people lose peace, confidence, focus, and spiritual strength because they connected themselves leisurely guacan individuals. The X, which also spoke about prideful people. She claimed arrogance attracts dark influence because pride resists coaxing accountability, humility, and truth. Some people become spiritually dangerous because they believe they are always right. They dominate conversations, manipulate emotions, and destroy peace wherever they go. She described how demons allegedly amplify narcissistic tendencies because pride isolates individuals from wisdom and repentance. Once someone refuses truth consistently, darkness gains stronger influence over their thinking. Then came one of the most important warnings of the entire testimony. The X, which said believers must stop ignoring discernment. She explained that the human spirit often senses danger before the mind fully understands it. Have you ever felt uneasy around someone without knowing why? Have you ever sensed heaviness entering a room after someone arrived? Have you ever ignored warning signs because a person appeared charming externally? She claimed many spiritual attacks succeed because people silence discernment in order to appear polite. But discernment exists for protection. The testimony emphasized that not everyone deserves unlimited access to your emotional space. Some people only enter your life to consume your peace, energy, confidence, joy, or spiritual focus. The X, which said demons especially target compassionate people because compassionate individuals often ignore boundaries. She warned viewers about chronic victims who refuse healing. These individuals constantly demand emotional energy while rejecting every solution. According to her testimony, some spirits feed through endless cycles of drama, dependency, and emotional exhaustion. The X, which described how certain individuals unconsciously create emotional crises repeatedly because chaos keeps attention focused on them. Relationships with such people become spiritually draining because peace never lasts. She also warned against people addicted to conflict. Some individuals feel uncomfortable when peace exists, so they provoke arguments, tension, suspicion, and division constantly. According to the testimony, darkness thrives through instability. Then she spoke directly about fear. She claimed fear is one of the strongest emotional feeding sources for demonic influence. This is why certain people constantly spread panic, paranoia, hopelessness, conspiracy, doom, and anxiety everywhere they go. Fear weakens clarity. Fear weakens faith. Fear weakens peace. The ex-witch explained that during of heaven, fear was intentionally cultivated because terrified people become easier to manipulate emotionally and spiritually. She warned viewers not to remain around individuals who constantly magnify fear without wisdom, hope, truth, or peace. Another warning involved mockers. According to the testimony, some people carry spiritual darkness because they continually mock purity, prayer, discipline, humility, or righteousness. They ridicule conviction until others feel ashamed to pursue spiritual growth. The ex-witch claimed demons love mockery because mockery silences truth through humiliation. Once people fear ridicule, compromise increases rapidly. She described environments where corruption became normalized slowly through jokes and sarcasm. At first people resisted, later they laughed. Eventually they participated. The testimony also addressed hidden occult involvement. The ex-witch warned viewers to be careful around individuals obsessed with dark spirituality, manipulation rituals, spirit communication, energy practices, curses, psychic control, or occult symbolism. She claimed many people invite dangerous spiritual influence into their lives while believing they are harmlessly exploring spirituality. She described how some individuals unknowingly become spiritually contaminated after repeated involvement with occult practices. According to her testimony, darkness rarely announces itself openly. It disguises itself as empowerment, enlightenment, healing, revenge, or hidden wisdom. The ex-witch warned believers to pay attention to patterns instead of appearances. Some people look successful externally while carrying intense inner darkness. She claimed spirits often hide behind charisma, beauty, intelligence, wealth, or influence. Then she revealed another disturbing strategy. She said demons allegedly seek proximity before influence. This means spiritually dangerous individuals often begin by gaining emotional trust. Once trust develops, boundaries weaken. Advice is accepted, influence grows. Eventually toxic thinking spreads naturally. She described friendships that slowly pulled believers away from prayer, discipline, moral conviction, and peace without obvious confrontation. According to the testimony, darkness prefers gradual compromise because sudden evil alarms people, but slow corruption feels comfortable. The ex-witch repeatedly stressed the importance of protecting your inner atmosphere. She said what surrounds you eventually enters you. If negativity surrounds you constantly, negativity eventually affects your thinking. If impurity surrounds you constantly, purity weakens. If chaos surrounds you constantly, peace disappears. She claimed many believers lose spiritual strength not because they stopped loving God, but because they continuously exposed themselves to spiritually contaminated relationships and environments. Then the testimony turned deeply personal. The ex-witch confessed that before leaving witchcraft, she intentionally studied emotionally vulnerable people. She said lonely individuals were easiest to manipulate because they ignored warning signs in exchange for companionship. Broken people often tolerated destructive relationships because rejection hurt more than chaos. She admitted that emotional dependency creates powerful spiritual blindness. When someone becomes emotionally attached, discernment weakens. Red flags are excused. Manipulation is rationalized. Darkness hides behind affection. The ex-witch urged viewers to examine every relationship policy. Ask yourself difficult questions. Do certain people repeatedly pull you toward anger, lust, fear, compromise, negativity, confusion, addiction, pride, bitterness, or despair? Do you lose peace after spending time with them? Do you feel spiritually distant afterward? She said not every difficult relationship is demonic. Humans are imperfect. Everyone struggles sometimes, but repeated patterns matter. The testimony warned against becoming spiritually arrogant after hearing these revelations. Some people hear messages about darkness and begin judging everyone around them harshly. The ex-witch cautioned that pride itself opens dangerous doors. Wisdom requires humility, compassion, discernment, and balance. She explained that the goal is not paranoia. The goal is awareness. The ex-witch also spoke about physical spaces. According to her testimony, environments saturated with violence, addiction, immorality, occult activity, or constant hatred become spiritually oppressive over time. She claimed repeated sin creates atmospheres where darkness operates more comfortably. This is why some locations feel heavy immediately. Some homes feel suffocating. Some gatherings leave people emotionally disturbed afterward. The ex-witch believed spiritual residue accumulates where acutely welcomed. She described how music, media, conversations, and entertainment shape spiritual atmospheres. Constant exposure to rage, lust, death, hatred, humiliation, or occult symbolism allegedly weakens spiritual sensitivity gradually. She urged viewers to guard what enters their minds daily. The testimony then focused on children. The ex-witch warned parents to pay attention to the people influencing their children emotionally and spiritually. She claimed darkness often enters through peer influence before direct rebellion appears. Negative friendships normalize destructive behavior slowly. She described how some children become emotionally exposed to manipulative, violent, or spiritually corrupt influences. According to the testimony, early exposure shapes long-term spiritual vulnerability. The ex-witch strongly emphasized prayer and spiritual discipline as protection. She claimed darkness thrives where spiritual negligence exists. When prayer disappears, discernment weakens. When truth disappears, confusion spreads. When discipline disappears, temptation increases. She urged viewers to stop treating spiritual warfare casually. According to her testimony, many people unknowingly entertain darkness through relationships, habits, conversations, entertainment, and environments while wondering why peace constantly disappears. Then she addressed emotional boundaries directly. The ex-witch claimed many believers allow toxic individuals unlimited emotional access because they misunderstand love. True love does not require tolerating abuse, manipulation, corruption, or destruction. Wisdom sometimes requires distance. She said some relationships improve only after boundaries are established. Darkness thrives where boundaries collapse completely. The testimony also warned against rescuing people at the expense of your own spiritual stability. Compassion without wisdom becomes dangerous. Some people drain every ounce of peace from those trying to save them while refusing responsibility for their own healing. The ex-witch explained that emotionally manipulative elentilt. They make others feel responsible for their happiness, stability, or survival. According to the testimony, darkness uses emotional control to trap compassionate people in exhausting cycles. She urged viewers to ask whether certain relationships produce peace, growth, wisdom, and spiritual strength, or whether they produce fear, exhaustion, temptation, and emotional collapse. Then she revealed another disturbing observation. The ex-witch said spiritually dangerous individuals often resist healed with genuine peace, prayer, truth, accountability, and light. They become uncomfortable around conviction. Some react with mockery. Others create conflict. Others withdraw suddenly. According to her testimony, darkness dislikes exposure. She described gatherings where one negative individual shifted the atmosphere instantly. Joy disappeared. Tension rose. Conversations became toxic. Offense spread rapidly. She claimed spiritually sensitive people often notice these shifts immediately. The ex-witch also warned about hidden resentment within families. She claimed many households carry deep unresolved bitterness that silently feeds emotional and spiritual destruction across generations. Envy between siblings, hatred between relatives, manipulation between parents and children, and buried offenses, spiritual heaviness within homes. She encouraged viewers to pursue forgiveness, healing, and truth rather than nurturing resentment secretly for years. Another major warning involved entertainment culture. The ex-witch claimed modern society normalizes darkness that glorifies violence, lust, humiliation, greed, occult themes, betrayal, and moral corruption. Repeated exposure slowly weakens spiritual resistance. She described how some people unknowingly invite oppressive thinking patterns through constant consumption of toxic content. Fearful media feeds anxiety. Lustful media feeds temptation. Violent media feeds aggression. Hopeless media feeds despair. According to the testimony, demons exploit repetition. What enters repeatedly eventually influences behavior. The ex-witch then shared a terrifying experience from her former life. She described attending gatherings where spiritually vulnerable individuals were intentionally targeted emotionally. Manipulators would study insecurities, wounds, desires, fears, and weaknesses before slowly influencing thoughts and decisions through emotional pressure. She claimed darkness rarely begins with obvious evil. It begins subtly through emotional compromise, dependency, temptation, distraction, offense, or flattery. The testimony warned viewers not to ignore people who consistently while secretly manipulating behind the scenes. According to her experience, deception often hides behind charm. She also addressed addiction. The ex-witch claimed addictions create repeated openings for spiritual oppression because addiction weakens discipline, clarity, and self-control. Some people become spiritually draining because destructive habits dominate their lives completely. She warned viewers not to normalize relationships built entirely around destructive behavior. Darkness grows stronger where accountability disappears. Then she spoke about anger. According to the testimony, uncontrolled anger creates one of the easiest emotional openings for dark influence. Rage clouds judgment, weakens restraint, and spreads emotional destruction rapidly. The ex-witch claimed some people unconsciously release spiritual heaviness through constant explosive anger. She described households where everyone walked on eggshells around one angry individual. Fear controlled the atmosphere daily. Peace vanished completely. The ex-witch urged viewers not to underestimate this with its result rage, hatred, and bitterness. She claimed demons thrive in environments saturated with emotional violence. Then she asked an important question. Who has access to your ears every day? She explained that voices shape thoughts. Thoughts shape actions. Actions shape destinies. According to her testimony, spiritually dangerous individuals often influence others gradually through repeated conversations filled with negativity, compromise, fear, lust, pride, or rebellion. She warned viewers to guard their minds carefully because repeated exposure changes internal thinking patterns over time. The ex-witch also spoke about counterfeit peace. Some relationships feel comforting temporarily, while secretly destroying spiritual clarity long-term. She compared this to poison hidden inside sweetness. She said darkness often offers emotional escape before demanding spiritual compromise. The testimony warned believers not to mistake chemistry for safety. Intense emotional connection does not automatically mean a relationship is healthy. Some people trigger powerful emotional attachment while carrying destructive influence. She described relationships where attraction blinded individuals, manipulation, dishonesty, abuse, or spiritual corruption. According to her testimony, emotional intensity can cloud discernment powerfully. The ex-witch repeatedly encouraged viewers to seek wisdom, prayer, truth, and spiritual maturity before deeply attaching themselves to others emotionally. Then she addressed isolation. She warned that darkness uses both toxic relationships and can lead isolation strategically. Some people stay trapped around destructive individuals because they fear loneliness. Others isolate completely after betrayal and become vulnerable to despair. According to the testimony, healthy spiritual community matters deeply. The goal is not paranoia toward everyone. The goal is discerning safe from destructive ones. She described spiritually healthy people as those who encourage truth, peace, growth, humility, accountability, healing, wisdom, and genuine love. Healthy relationships leave your spirit clearer, not darker. The ex-witch urged viewers to examine the fruit produced by every close relationship in their lives. Is peace increasing or decreasing? Is discipline growing or collapsing? Is truth becoming clearer or more confusing? Is purity strengthening or weakening? Then she delivered another chilling statement. She claimed demons especially target conversations because words carry spiritual influence. Repeated negative speech allegedly shapes atmospheres emotionally and spiritually. This is why some people constantly release curses through their mouths without realizing it. Words of hatred, death, hopelessness, humiliation, and destruction poison environments gradually. The testimony warned viewers to stop entertaining conversations that continuously glorify darkness. She claimed repeated agreement with negativity strengthens destructive thinking patterns internally. The ex-witch also described spiritual numbness. According to her testimony, repeated exposure to darkness eventually dulls discernment. At first compromise feels wrong, later it feels normal. Eventually conviction disappears entirely. She urged viewers not to ignore early warning signs because small compromises grow into larger bondage over time. The testimony then turned toward healing. The ex-witch said many spiritually dangerous individuals are deeply wounded people who never healed properly. Rejection, trauma, abuse, abandonment, humiliation, and betrayal often create emotional openings where bitterness grows. Darkness feeds on unresolved pain. However, she strongly emphasized that woundedness does not excuse destructive behavior. Healing requires responsibility, humility, truth, and willingness to change. She encouraged viewers not to absorb other people's darkness trying to rescue them. You cannot heal people by drowning beside them. The ex-witch described how spiritually mature individuals maintain compassion without surrendering boundaries. They help wisely while protecting their peace, clarity, and spiritual health. She also warned against becoming obsessed with demons themselves. According to her testimony, fear and obsession both create imbalance. The focus should remain on truth, wisdom, discernment, prayer, healing, and spiritual growth rather than paranoia. The ex-witch said many people unknowingly empower darkness through constant fear. Fear magnifies emotional instability and weakens inner peace. She urged viewers instead to strengthen discernment through prayer, discipline, wisdom, truth, and healthy relationships. Then she addressed something many people avoid discussing. The testimony claimed some churches become spiritually unhealthy because toxic individuals gain influence without accountability. Manipulative personalities, prideful leadership, gossip, jealousy, and hidden corruption allegedly contaminate entire communities spiritually. She warned viewers not to ignore toxic patterns simply because they occur within religious environments. Spiritual appearance does not guarantee spiritual health. According to the ex-witch, some of the most dangerous manipulation hides behind religious language, while secretly feeding control, fear, pride, and division. She encouraged viewers to pursue genuine truth rather than blind loyalty to unhealthy individuals. The testimony then focused on discernment during conversations. The ex-witch claimed spiritually sensitive people often notice shifts internally when someone speaks from bitterness, manipulation, hatred, lust, or deception. Peace decreases, confusion increases, inner tension rises. She urged viewers not to silence discernment repeatedly for the sake of comfort. The ex-witch also spoke about spiritual exhaustion. According to her testimony, constantly carrying other people's chaos without boundaries weakens emotional and spiritual strength over time. Some individuals unconsciously consume every ounce of energy around them. She warned viewers not to become permanent emotional dumping grounds for people who refuse healing, accountability, or change. Then she shared one final major warning. The ex-witch claimed darkness often hides inside familiar relationships because familiarity lowers caution. Family members, close friends, romantic partners, co-workers, and long-time companions sometimes become the very people spreading emotional poison most consistently. She urged viewers to examine patterns honestly rather than assuming closeness automatically equals safety. According to her testimony, spiritually dangerous influence is recognized through consistent confusion, fear, manipulation, exhaustion, temptation, bitterness, division, chaos, hopelessness, pride, lust, rage, and spiritual numbness. Healthy influence produces peace, wisdom, humility, truth, discipline, healing, clarity, accountability, and genuine love. Now listen carefully to this final message. The purpose of this warning is not hatred. It is awareness. Not everyone carrying pain carries darkness intentionally. Some people desperately need healing, prayer, compassion, and truth. But wisdom requires recognizing when repeated exposures to certain individuals is destroying your peace, clarity, and spiritual health. You must stop ignoring discernment. You must stop tolerating relationships that continuously drag you toward darkness. You must stop sacrificing peace in order to keep unhealthy people comfortable. You must stop silencing warning signs inside your spirit. Guard your mind. Guard your conversations. Guard your environment. Guard your heart. Because according to Celestial in Thessalony, some people are not just emotionally draining. They are feeding something dark every time you remain connected to their chaos. If this message opened your eyes, subscribe to Shadow Warefare right now. Like this video, share it with someone who needs discernment, and comment below. I will guard my spirit. Stay alert, stay wise, and never forget, not every battle is visible.